if we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers, and welcome to a special presentation of Campaign for America, Tonight in America. Well, as we said last night, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring to you tonight, this evening, in a few moments, a congressional candidate here in the United States, here in New Jersey. We're going to have a nice conversation with him about many of the topics, many of the issues and challenges that America is facing. I also intend to speak to him about a issue of concern regarding the Canadian people, and that is crossing the border. But what happened today, and we are addressing, and I did get a heck of a lot of feedback, there are now U.S. troops, U.S. military personnel on the ground in Ukraine. Now, that doesn't mean that they are now fighting, but they are there, and the U.S. government says that they are there as inspectors. Now, for 2 years, we've been talking about a lead up to a ground war against the United States or against Russia, a proxy war that Biden has created, where eventually we're going to see Vietnam Chapter 2 all over again. I've shared with the American people, and we've gotten thousands and thousands of emails, and I'm not exaggerating, folks, about people very concerned because they see the scenario being set up like it was set up right before we sent ground troops to Vietnam. First, it was arms, ammunition, money, and then inspectors, advisors, and then combat troops. Joe Biden is leading us into a war we should not be in. I said all along, let NATO handle it, let Europe handle it. I just wonder where the national interest, the national security interest of the United States is here. But that's a topic we'll talk to our guest about. He's a brave guy. He's a very, very good prosecutor when he worked in the law enforcement field. And the guy's on the ball. He's one of us. He's not an insider. He's not an outsider, but he is on the side of the people. So I'm going to call you Congressman tonight, if you don't mind.
It's got a good ring.
Of the New Jersey CD, that's Congressional District 11 here in New Jersey. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. And I look forward to a nice, healthy conversation on a host of issues. And I'd like to say, although we may not agree on everything, we agree that we are Americans and we have America's interests first.
Well, that is what people need to hear. And they need to hear it from a grassroots gentleman like you. You're not a polished talking point politician. You're a regular guy. I know that. I've sat with you. I've spoken with you. My wife and I have spoken with you and your wife, and it's certainly a pleasure to have an individual running for office like you on the air tonight. By the way, folks, we are now live streaming on 6 platforms right now live. So we're going to send you those platforms later after the broadcast, folks, and you'll be able to tune in. All right. You mind if I call you Paul? Can I call you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Paul, let's talk about some of the dinner discussions going on in America tonight. I suppose the first thing is what we're hearing about the shortage of fuel, the shortage of diesel. I've spoken to some residents who are panicking, who actually heat their homes with oil, and they're being told that they may have to ration on that oil. Can you help us wade through this problem?
It's a huge problem. One of the things the Biden administration did was to close land to new leasing, stop the Keystone Pipeline, and basically cripple the American energy industry. And I know it's very important as far as Canada goes as well, which a lot of your viewers are from. And one of the biggest things we can do, I say America first, and our northern neighbor is fantastic, and as is our southern neighbor. But Canada really is a fantastic neighbor to have on our northern border. America energy independence is the best thing we can do to get inflation under control and protect our allies. I'm even going to go a step further. American energy independence should be energy dominance. If we control the market and we control the oil and the gas with our great relations to our northern neighbor, then we control OPEC and we control the oil markets of Russia. So energy independence is part of my campaign. I want to see the Keystone Pipeline completed, and I want to see gas and oil flowing. People don't realize how much is represented in petroleum. It's not just gasoline, it's products, it's fertilizer. It's so much a part of the world. I believe in clean energy. I don't deny that man has something to do with climate change, but we cannot meet our goals unless we're energy independent, and energy independent makes us a secure, more profitable nation.
Now, Paul, something that's very troubling is that we do have, or we had, oil reserves, strategic oil reserves, and they were there in the event of a natural disaster or war. We're inching closer to war, and we'll talk about that a little later in this broadcast. But this idea that the Biden administration and the Democrats have with regard to just giving away our strategic oil reserves, using them, not necessarily here, but selling some of that to potential enemies. Right. What's your thoughts on that matter?
I'm dramatically opposed, in opposition to Mikey Sherrill's view. I had a debate with her the other day. That's my opponent, Mikey Sherrill, and she's naive, absolutely naive. And for someone that was in the military, and I respect her service in the military, but she said that the current economic policies and what she quoted, I know it's been a tough 2 years. Mikey, tough 2 years. Where have you been? She should have been on this topic, but drawing down our strategic reserves because we're in an economic problem and an economic crisis with inflation. That's not what the strategic reserves are for. And she goes, oh, no, it's exactly what they're for. Drawing down our strategic reserves to help out pennies on the pump in America. That's not what it's for. Strategic reserves are for times of national emergency, crisis, war. It is exactly the name it says, strategic reserves. It's not economic reserves. It's not we can tap into this if we're not happy about gasoline. I'm against using the strategic reserves as it's a cop out. It's just a trick to lower the prices, and I'm not in favor of it.
Paul, as you know, I'm a retired naval officer like she is, and I must tell you, I am appalled at her. I'm appalled over the fact that she served in the U.S. military honorably, and certainly I salute her for that. But now she is serving a political party and not her country anymore. And what I'm appalled over is that she knows, she's got to know that if we go to war, well, what in the world is going to fuel our tanks, our jets, our ships, and on and on. And
Right.
what I'm appalled about is, at least to my knowledge, and maybe you could weigh in on this a bit, I have not heard her once speak up for the people and speak up for the national security implications of what the Biden administration and her party has done to those reserves.
She's not going to. She is in lockstep, and that's a perfect word, lockstep with the Pelosi and Biden. She 99% of the time, she ran on being a moderate. She ran on being someone that would reach across the aisle, and she's proven she can't. I'm that person. I was born and raised in my state. I lived here almost my entire life. I went to school here, public schools. She is not going to reach across the aisle, and her naivete, is dangerous. She doesn't see the link between she doesn't see the link between energy and security, energy and inflation. I like to tell people that are viewing this, it's not a congressman's job to react. It's a congressman's job to see going forward there's problems. When Russia invaded Georgia years ago, and when Russia took the Crimea, we should have saw that we had an issue. We had a problem. And energy independence, this is a tough world. People that say that, green energy is going to meet all resources, I think they are seeing now the flaws in green energy. Again, solar, wind, thermal, they all have a place, but it's not going to replace natural gas. We have 400 years of natural gas and oil in this country, and we're one of the cleanest countries in the world compared to China and India, who are the top polluters. Once we get our energy independence back, and Steve, I think you might be able to talk about as well. It is unbelievable that with hands begging on his knees, President Biden is going to Venezuela asking them for more oil, and going to Russia and going to OPEC and asking them for more oil. How did we get in this situation? It's a sign of weakness, which I think every country is seeing and taking advantage of.
Well, to your point about the solar energy and electric energy, et cetera, we learned through the hurricane that hit Florida that the electric cars all over the state, vis-a-vis the floods, shorted out. The batteries exploded. They needed gas to escape. The cars weren't working. So you're absolutely right. This idea of electrical power. My point is, Paul, we don't have the infrastructure, right? We don't have the infrastructure at all for that kind of energy.
Oh, you're so right. There's the wealthy liberals and some others, but the infrastructure. Can you believe it? And you're in Nutley. We know the city of Newark. We know the city of Patterson. But let's point out some of the other cities across the nation that are congested, that don't have off-street parking. How is the infrastructure going to be built for, like in my area? Patterson is right down the road. It's not in district. But you're talking about 3-family homes with no garages, no driveways. Where are the electric stations going to be built? Where are the cables going to be attached to? There is no infrastructure for cities like Patterson and Camden and Trenton to get that done. They are densely populated. And why don't we, instead of saying these grand plans, why don't we do smaller, shorter term plans that have reasonable expectations? Not 30 years out, but what about 5 years out?
To your point about Venezuela and other countries, in fact, even China, who's ready to go to war with us, Joe Biden's trying to wheel and deal with them with regard to energy. So we have an out of control executive office, and it needs to be dealt with. And you're going to be elected to Congress. I'm confident you will be. And the fact of the matter is that you're going to be sitting in that chair one day. And since you talked about, Venezuela and some foreign countries, I want to talk about, before we get to the other issues, I guess the topic, as I opened up today, is a possible ground war with Russia. Number one, Paul, I've said, and I think most people are getting the point now, this is ending up as a proxy war for the United States for whatever reason that we're involved in. I've said, in fact, I was on a national media program earlier, and I said that President Zelensky should become the next Secretary of State under Biden because he is dictating our foreign policy. He was before the UN last week demanding more and more and more. Now you're going to be the guy that's going to vote on funding and the tax dollars, and the question is not to you because I know you have the answer, as I have. What is the national security interest of the United States regarding Ukraine? And as you know, and we've talked about it, the answer is, well, we're still trying to find it. I mean, the fact is NATO, all right, that's NATO's problem. That's Europe's problem. Sending weapons to a degree, yes, but sending troops, what's your opinion on that?
Well, we might be a little divergent here, but not much. Sending weapons for the Ukrainians to do the fight, I was always in favor of that. Sending them the HIMARS rockets, sending them the Javelin missiles. Let the Ukrainians fight the fight, and I think they've been doing an excellent job. I've met with the Ukrainian people here in the area, and they've been doing a fantastic job taking the fight to the Russians, the invaders. And I believe that Putin is a dictator. I believe that he is a threat to our NATO allies. But that's where we're concerned. And yet, like you said, we have to remember that our NATO allies, Germany and Poland and all the other Eastern Bloc countries that now are part of NATO and have large NATO, we can never forget, though, when Ukraine gave up their nuclear capacity, there was a pledge to help and defend them. There was a pledge to always to support them. They gave up their nuclear arms so that Russia, so that we wouldn't have that issue. And right now, Russia has invaded parts of the Ukraine. They have taken large swaths of area. And I'm in support of the Ukrainians having the ability to fight the fight themselves. And I think they've been doing an excellent job. Well, I'm aware of what you just said this morning, that there are certain similarities to advisors or people that are technicians looking on how the weaponry is used. I don't believe it'll go past that at this point. But as Congress, I will definitely be on top of this. I will be looking at this issue. I will be looking at what we are doing. I don't want to see American troops in that war. We have not seen. It may change if a NATO ally is attacked, and then we have obligations under our alliance. But so far, Russia has not had the daring or the stupidity to attack a NATO country yet.
Paul, I appreciate your honest response. That wasn't a political response. That was an honest one. And like you say, we may have a little divergent views on it, but I've got to tell you, impressive, very good.
Thank you.
How refreshing it is. That's what I'm saying. Not to hear political talking points. All right, let's get back to the other dinner table discussion, the economy. Joe Biden gets on the air. Joe Biden's telling us, well, the economy is good. Things are fine. Inflation is under control. Wow. And Kamala Harris parrots him. Your opponent, Mickey Sherrill, again, is not standing up for the American people and saying, hey, look, Mr. President, we need to deal with this and we need to deal with it decisively. You've got to do a course change here. Where's she? In fact, I got to tell you, I've lived in this district for 50 years. Ever since she was elected to office, never seen her. Never seen her. First time I got mail from her is when you became a threat. When she realized that you may just very well, and in my view, will take her out of office.
Well, that is a compliment. Thank you, Steve, for that. And you're right. She has now burned through about $6 million to basically beat a first-time politician. As you know, I ran offline. Offline means I ran against the party choice. And I won the primary because I let it be known to people like yourselves. This is what I stand for. I stand for law enforcement. I stand for liberty. I stand for freedom, and a whole bunch of things. But going back to your main point, the economy. Mikey Sherrill at a recent debate, she actually said to the audience, "Oh, I know it's been a tough couple of years. You know it's been a tough couple of years. Wow, what an understatement. What a total lack of pain, feeling the suffering and pain of the average CD11 family. I have a 4.5-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm 56 years old. I got a little late start in life with my family, but paying $9 for a pound of bacon and paying $7 for butter and milk and eggs, all the prices are going through. I do the shopping and cooking in my family, and my shopping cart is 2/3 full. My gas tank is through the roof as far as costs. Mikey Sherrill, she lives in an ivory tower. She lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion financed by the bank that her husband belongs to, which is a little bit of a scandal that's brewing right now. She got a sweetheart deal on a mortgage that none of us could get. But Mikey Sherrill doesn't have to be concerned about these things. Her wealth could exceed $50 million. She doesn't feel the pain that an average CD11 person, you, me, we're not living high on the hog. We're living quite the basic lifestyle in this district. I care about inflation. I care about mortgage rates. Mortgage rates, they're through the roof. Who can afford to buy a home? And when you say, oh, the economy grew by 4%, but inflation is 8%, you're down 4%. It's common math. Inflation is bad, and oil and gas is expensive. Food prices are expensive. And all this is because of the Biden administration policies and Mikey Sherrill going along with everything he wants. And she sends him bills and he signs it. It's a nightmare right now, and it's going to get worse. This is heading for a full recession next year.
Let's talk about some of the assaults on the constitutional rights of the people here in America. For example, freedom of speech. All right. What we have happening now is, as you know, Joe Biden is still talking about the ministry of truth. I just can't believe this is happening. But the reason why I do believe it's happening is because Justin Trudeau, as you know, he now has a bill presently in the Parliament that is going to enable that government, and it is all fact. In fact, we've been talking about it for about a year, what I call the 21st century Berlin Wall. It's going to be an electronic wall where the government will monitor every transmission going in and out of that country. Hard to believe from a free country. But I find it interesting that after Trudeau announced that, Joe Biden comes up with this idea of ministry of truth. So now we're talking about something very, 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 very critical, an assault on our freedom of speech. And of course, as we know, a lot of controversy from the left over Elon Musk buying Twitter because he really wants to unleash the ability of the American people to feel safe when they speak. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that freedom under assault, because it seems to me, Paul, and I'm sure, you've seen it yourself, that conservatives like yourself and myself are really being targeted by the Department of Justice. Now, I worked for the FBI, as you know. I was on their National Joint Terrorism Task Force, and the guys on the ground are good. I mean, the troops, I always say the foot soldiers do a good job in protecting the country. But you're going to be in the United States Congress, and there's been a lot of committee hearings over a lot of things that conservatives do. Maybe some of the people want to hear from you. What would your plans be to find out exactly what's going on in the DOJ and why they have been weaponized against parents who are trying to get their children a good education? We'll talk about education also, and against anyone who, under Joe Biden's Ministry of Truth policies, will be targeted by law enforcement.
Well, on the campaign trail, I think I was the first on two issues. I was the first on the first person to say that defense of Israel, and Israel is our best ally in the Middle East. But I was also the first to come out and talk about breaking up the monopoly of some big tech companies. They have too much control and too much suppression of free speech. Free speech is healthy. You can have, and it's quite frankly, it's easy to research yourself. There are a few times where I've seen things on social media where I shook my head and a friend of mine would like something or agree with it. And I'd be like, oh, that can't be true. Let me do some more research. And I would look up at research and I would find that it was an old post from 3 years ago that's been debunked. That's what freedom of speech is. You get to look at things, you get to research, you get to hear. I think we've all faced Facebook, where I have posted great articles on Facebook. I read the Wall Street Journal every day, and I take articles that are. It's a great paper. It's America's best paper, I think, in my opinion. And I post sometimes articles. And Facebook, it's a Wall Street Journal article, but they'll put something in for the rest of the story. Click here, or for further information, click here. It's the Wall Street Journal. It's a reputable, nationwide, well-known paper, even over the world. how is Facebook having so much power and so much dominance over the discourse between people? So I believe that Facebook is one of the companies that I would look to break up. I like to say I'm a Teddy Roosevelt Republican, and he was pro-business, he was pro-America, but he knew when things had gone too far and a monopoly was established. I think Amazon could be looked at as a monopoly, Google could be looked at as a monopoly, and Facebook can be looked at as a monopoly. And maybe it's time that we start to look at the suppression of free speech. And like you said, with Joe Biden and what is happening across the world, I think that a discourse is healthy. We need to have freedom of speech. And I also think that, you know what, most people know when you see dangerous speech. It's that old adage in law school, you can yelling fire in a crowded movie theater. We know what dangerous speech is. Most people can tell. And there are you being in law enforcement, me being in law enforcement, there are practical avenues when people should be addressed and people should be concerned about what free speech has brought. There is dangerous speech that incites violence against others and gender and race. And then there is just healthy commentary and healthy discussion that needs to be had for a democracy to survive. So I think we are definitely at the crossroads where we have to look at the tech companies and do they have too much power and oversight on our free speech? What happened with the shutting down of certain websites and kicking off people and banning them from Twitter? I think Elon Musk, from what I know of him, and I'm reviewing more and I'm keeping an eye on him and I'm listening to him. So far, I like what I see. I like what I'm seeing about his assessment of how Twitter can be improved and more open to people like us to have voice their opinions.
Paul, we're trying to wrap our arms around this very important topic: the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party. Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden, I assume now Joe Biden, I'm pretty sure it's Trudeau, somehow has allowed the Chinese government, and I will always refer to them as the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, because you can't be a part of that government, right, unless you're a communist.
That's the right definition.
How in the world did they allow Chinese police departments take up headquarters in New York City? There is one there. There are two, I think, in Toronto and elsewhere. They've targeted North America. And how in the world, and I'm asking you rhetorically because I don't have the answer myself yet, but how in the world does this happen? And then when we question that, we are told, well, they're there to look at Chinese corruption, Chinese criminal acts, etc. We know they're there, all right, or at least believe. I'm not going to say we know, but you and I have been in law enforcement a long time, and I certainly have looked at the modus operandi of the CCP. I believe they're there to hunt down Chinese defectors, Chinese dissidents who have escaped the communists in China. But we've allowed these to be these headquarters. It's not big, giant headquarters. You've probably got 2 or 3 Chinese cops in there, all right? But they're out there, again, in my view, doing something that's hurting our national security. And I bring that up because somebody on this feed, I got a couple of feeds and I'm watching them, on this feed asked about that. So again, you're going to be in the U.S. Congress, and the fact of the matter is, I've heard nothing from Washington about this. We are going to go, myself and others are going to go to New York City at one point and talk to some of the police there at one police plaza. Maybe they don't even know why. They just follow their orders. Isn't that astounding, though?
Well, definitely, we have seen that, clearly right now, China and Mikey Sherrill, my opponent, said, and we have a little graphic and a commercial that's out regarding China and her ties and her husband's ties to the Chinese Communist Party. And again, it's the bank that he works for. She's gotten a special sweetheart deal on a mortgage. She had just recently sold about $600 million worth of stock in the bank that he works for, the husband works for. And this bank has ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and even to the point where they put out their plenum out on the website. So this is a concern. I'm concerned about the Chinese in gaining influence. They are our competition militarily and economically. If Russia is in the West, certainly China is in the Far East, and they are definitely going to be taking us on. as a former a person formerly in the Navy, I think you can appreciate that we need to be ready to fight two wars, and that our naval capacity has been denigrated, and we need to make sure that our military, particularly the Navy, is able to fight a two-war strategy. And, I hope it doesn't come to this, but I worry that there are certainly there are economic spies that steal our intellect. Sorry, our intellectual property. That is a threat to our security when we have spies masquerading as students, masquerading as businessmen, stealing American intellectual property. They steal our designs for chips, and that is definitely a threat. We have seen it with scientists that are here in America, and we have, I believe that the Justice Department has prosecuted a few people for stealing intellectual property. So we can never look and see them as an ally. We have to see them as, at the very least, a competitor. So when I hear what you just said about Chinese authorities in New York City, I would look into it. I would be concerned. I would want to know why they're here, for how long they're here, what is their objective, is there an end game? As far as they were sent here for 6 months to do X, Y, and Z. Once they accomplish X, Y, and Z, then why are they still here? So I would be more on the oversight. I definitely would want to be tracking them. We have to consider them differently than what we would consider other people and other countries that we deal with. China has certainly made it known that they have eyes on Taiwan, and that if they don't get their way, they're going to take it over militarily in the future. And we just have to position ourselves to where we make sure that they know that this is going to be bad for them if they try to do that. I think today you're aware of that we are positioning B-52 bombers in Australia for the future security of that region. So we have our allies, England, Australia, New Zealand. I think that we rely on our allies, but I am concerned that China America has always been a little bit short-sighted. I think we need to have the long-term plan that China has. China has been executing on a long-term plan for quite some time.
Paul, let's talk about that, what you just brought up regarding the nuclear armed bombers in Australia. It goes to the point of, and I'm watching this feed and that feed and getting, I'm getting around the country, and people are asking, what happened to diplomacy? I mean, here we've got a president who's talking about nuclear weapons, who's talking about B-52 bombers that have nuclear weapons to go to war with who? I mean, come on, the Chinese know that, right, Paul? They know what they're there for. So the question is, when do we find a Ronald Reagan again? Okay, when do we find a John F. Kennedy again? He was a Democrat, but during the Cuban Missile Crisis, he worked very hard for a diplomatic solution to what would have been World War III, and he did. He did. Ronald Reagan, when he met with Gorbachev, it was either increase the nuclear armament and risk a nuclear war, or sit down and talk. There's nobody left. I mean, there is nobody left in this government that is willing to sit down and at least propose some sort of solution to the problems we're having with, especially the Ukraine-Russian war. We're now seeing tonight, the news broke, I'm sure you saw it, where Iran is now ready to strike at Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is incredible. And then you got Xi over there in China ready to go after Taiwan. And our president's answer, and the answer of his party, your opponent's party, by the way, is, well, we're just going to stock up our nuclear weapons, and when we're ready to fire, we're going to fire. Where's diplomacy?
Diplomacy is certainly lacking. And the diplomacy should be the Teddy Roosevelt diplomacy, walk softly, carry a big stick. It should be strength. It should be strength that Reagan, he had strength. He was a great president. And we saw his diplomacy with the use of mid-range nuclear missiles in Western Europe. And we saw him outspend the Soviet Union in what they used to make fun of it, Star Wars. But Star Wars drained the Soviet Union economy, and it drove them into a situation that was untenable for them, and they had to negotiate a long-term peace. So we are a strong country economically. We are a strong country military. Those things should not be exclusive. They should be joined. Economically, we should be helping our friends and allies, and we should not be trying to gain further oil from OPEC or further oil from Venezuela. That only props up OPEC, and it only props up Venezuela. Having our allies buy oil and natural gas from Russia props up the Russia regime. I was against the Nord Stream pipeline. Mikey Sherrill, she was partially funded by the Nord Stream pipeline. I believe she had donors to her campaign that worked for the Nord Stream pipeline. So this is not smart American policy. The diplomacy goes hat in hand with our economic ability and with our military ability. It has to go hat in hand. The bombers in Australia, they're not, as you know, they're not nuclear yet. They are simply there. They are long range nuclear. They are long range nuclear capable bombers, but nuclear weapons haven't been put there yet. But it sends a message to China. But more importantly, we need to support our allies like Taiwan, support Australia. We have a weapons deal now with Australia, where I believe they're gaining nuclear submarines. This is good for the security, good for New Zealand's security, Great Britain's security. So we strengthen our security with our allies through economic, through economics, through better trade deals, through better energy independence, and and to rely on America for its close allies. I believe countries like West Germany, Great Britain, Australia, Canada are tremendous neighbors and tremendous friends that we can rely upon in a crisis in the world. So I wouldn't trust Russia. I wouldn't trust China. I wouldn't trust Iran. Certainly in a threat to Israel, and now always been a threat to Saudi Arabia. They are, quite frankly, different sects of Islam. So, Shia and Sunni have always been at war. So we need to help our friends, and we need to always be aware of our enemies.
Paul, before we talk about the rights of parents in education, you see the guy behind me right here?
Yep, the first president I ever voted for.
All right, he just whispered something in my ear, and he says, "You could tell Paul to tone it down with Teddy. Teddy, you know." I agree with you, Teddy Roosevelt, great president, great president. All right, now let's come right down to the grassroots level where the power of the people stands, and that's in our school districts. I always said school board's the most critical level of government in our country. It all starts there with the education of our children, because as you and I have talked, the future of our country, the national security of our country, depends on what our children are being educated about. So here we have in Democrat states, you're in a blue state, which is going to hopefully turn red real soon.
Yes.
We have parents who go to school board meetings who are told that they've got 3 minutes to speak, who are told that if they get out of line according to the policies of elected school boards, the police come in. We saw videos around the country where parents have been dragged out of school board meetings. And what we see is sex education at levels that you would never believe, civics, history, the heritage of this great country, all thrown out the window. Now, look, I'm not an advocate, never will be an advocate of government controlling education. But I think it's about time that the United States Congress, and I'm going to throw this to you, get involved to the point that they will ensure that the rights of parents are protected, especially when it comes to their own children.
Okay. Well, I take a very personal issue on this, because I have a 4.5 and a 2-year-old. I'm a product of the public school system. I went to public schools my entire life, from K through 12. I had a wonderful education with wonderful, caring teachers. I wish I was a better student, Steve. I really do. But I got the basic education, and it allowed me to go further. I decided to go to college, but that's what K through 12 is. A public school teacher, if you ask them, what do they want to do? They want to do the subject they're teaching. Math teachers want to teach math. English teachers want to teach English. They don't want to be doing sexual education or alternative education. And quite frankly, a third grader, what are we pushing on these families? Families should have, I stand with families, they should have a right to say what is being taught. What is the purpose of a public education K through 12? Is to make a young person ready to become a citizen and ready to take their role in the country. They need to either have job skills, go on for further education in college, become a doctor, become a lawyer, go into a trade, go into the military and serve. That's what that K through 12, the public school system, should be doing. I talked to so many teachers and they said, we don't want to do anything other than teach math, science, whatever their subject matter is. Now, in my district down here, and you're part of the district where you live, we had a town called Cedar Grove. And Cedar Grove, a rogue president of the Board of Education, decided to send a survey out to 3rd graders to 12th graders. And in that survey, they were asked, what is your gender? What is your race? What is your religion? What is your pronoun that you want to be addressed as? What is your sexual orientation? And do you feel safe in school looking and acting like you do? The biggest problem with that was it was done without parents being notified. And if the Board of Education president was so sure that this was the right thing to do, why do it in darkness? Why not give it to the parents and let them know that they're going to be giving these students, 3rd graders, this survey to be done in class? The parents were outraged. I stood by the parents. I went, and even though a congressman has maybe not so much an issue in a state or local issue, I stood with the parents. I said this was wrong and this shouldn't have been done. The parents should have been at least notified. And a judge ruled that all those surveys get destroyed, and it was the wrong thing to do. You're right. In Congress, we can come up with a parental bill of rights, and we can definitely look toward that to say nationally what parents have the right to do. It is a local issue right now in the state of New Jersey, especially, and a lot of parents are upset about these mandates that are being sent down. I know I am, because I intend to send my kids to private school. Mikey Sherrill, my opponent, not so much. She's accepted money from the NJEA, which is a teachers union, and yet remember that old adage? I think you can not for me, not for thee, but for me. That's a funny saying that it's good for you, but I don't want it. So Mikey Sherrill doesn't have to be concerned about public education. I'm not against private schools and I'm not against wealth, but I am against hypocrites. And saying that you're taking money from the Public Teachers Association as a donation to her campaign and then sending your kids to private school, that's a hypocrite.
Paul, a couple of things on that. You're sending your children to private school, you said?
No, I intend to send my kids to public school. Mikey Sherrill sends her kids to private school.
Oh, okay.
Right now, my son will go to public school kindergarten next year.
Okay. Well, this is one of the roads that we're going to intersect, but this is great, okay? It gives people an idea of where thinking is. I agree with you. Teachers should not be blamed for the problems that they're facing. Government is interfering with that. But I've suggested to people, especially, Paul, in our state, in our district, I hear some things going on in our district that are troubling. I tell them, send your children to a parochial school. Send them to a private school. Send them elsewhere because it's completely and totally out of control. We can't, meaning the parents can no longer protect their children from all of this wokeness and this political correctness. And so one thing that I would ask you to explore, I'm going to put you on the spot, right, buddy? I would ask you to explore is that I've always believed that parents who are forced to, and in this case, they feel they're forced to send their kids to a non-public school, they should get tax credits. We're paying for, no longer paying for education, but we're paying for indoctrination. And by the way, I bring this up because you got to see what's going on here. We have a Canadian audience here predominantly and an American audience here on this other feed. So it's a thought somebody just passed on. So I think the option should remain open. But as you said, and boy, this is the first time I've heard somebody say where you said a parental bill of rights. Very, very important. Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, we know what he's done there to do away with all this stuff. There's a premier now in Alberta, Canada. If somebody in Canada could please give me her name, I'd like to share that with our American audience, who is putting an end to this wokeness. And again, the first federal level of government that the people depend on to protect them is going to be you, our congressman. Now in the area of education, again, you used a word that I haven't heard, and I'm glad I heard it from you tonight. You use the word vocation. Joe Biden was ready to give, and I'm glad the courts at least temporarily stopped it, tens of thousands of dollars to pay for the college education of young people. Well, I would never get that scholarship because I was suspended from college and had to beg, beg the vice president of my college to get back in. But what about the kids that become plumbers? What about the kids that become carpenters? What about a guy like me? I mean, I got in, it took me not 4 years. I wasn't the brightest hack in the world. It took me 6 years to get a college education. I got it, all right? But the fact of the matter is, I look at that piece of paper now, and I've got to tell you, Paul, and I'll tell anybody this, it's not that important anymore. It's a piece of paper. I remember a naval admiral telling me that the best officers in the Navy are not those who come out of the Naval Academy. They know the book, but they don't know how to work with people, how to manage people, and how to do what they have to do on the ground. So my point is this. What's wrong then with helping out those kids that are going into vocations, auto mechanics, carpenters, et cetera, et cetera? So as a congressman, is that something you brought it up, all right? So is it something that's on your mind that you want to expound upon?
Oh, 100%. First of all, the loan forgiveness down here in the States, talking to up to Canadian, right now there's an issue where Joe Biden has said that he wants to do loan forgiveness, and he set a number on it, and it's going to cost the American taxpayer $500 billion to $1 trillion, and that is ridiculous. When you take out a loan as a student, you have an obligation. You don't get anything taught to you if that loan gets wiped out by the federal government. So there is no learning experience. I took out loans. I've paid back loans. My wife paid back loans, and that's what you do. When you forgive loans, you also encourage the educational institutions, the universities and the college to raise prices because they know that the loans are going to get repaid. So why don't we raise prices and make the loans even worse? And then the loans will be forgiven again. It's not the right way to do it. And this money can definitely be shifted to more important things in the United States. But one of the glaring omissions is trade schools. Where is the loan school forgiveness for tradesmen? Like you said, I think we need more plumbers, more electricians. God knows that we need more electricians as I went through a problem in my own kitchen. So more electricians, more plumbers, more mechanics, more people that own their own small business, which would make, which America has been really just brought about. It's a small business in America has been the golden opportunity for every immigrant coming into the country. And that's what we'd encourage. So many tradesmen, they have their own businesses doing HVAC and doing, plumbing and electric and carpentry and painting. So where is the loan forgiveness for them? Where is the loan forgiveness to my wife that paid off her school debt just last year? Is that fair? So I'm against this loan forgiveness. It's clearly an election ploy, like so many other things that are election ploys in this year. It's 2022. We're a week away. It's one of the most important elections we've had in a long time. And I'm not in favor of this loan forgiveness at all.
Danielle Smith, that's the premier of Alberta. I bring her up because she is truly given Justin Trudeau a run for the money with regard to his policies, which mirror Joe Biden's policies. And one policy that is mirroring these two guys, well, I'm not going to say they seem like they sleep with each other, but I would say that politically, it seems like they do. Okay, these days there are fact checkers on these Facebook, and they're going to say, well, he's alleged that something's going on.
I guess it used to be strange bedfellows, right?
You see that? I tell you, I wasn't the brightest hack in college. Strange bedfellows. Well, Trudeau and Biden seem to be mirroring each other's policies. So I got here, thank you, from our friends from Canada, Danielle Smith, I'm sorry. And then some of the American people are asking about the Second Amendment. Justin Trudeau has pretty much banned the sale, the ownership. I mean, you name it, he's done everything he could to take I'm not going to say the right to bear arms because they have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We have a Constitution, but their ability to bear arms. He's just simply crippled their ability. And I'm talking about innocent people to defend themselves, even to go hunting. He's banning their weapons. Now, here in the United States, the Supreme Court has ruled that, we have the right to bear arms, and you're a prosecutor, lawyer, you know what they specifically ruled, but it seems like in this state, New Jersey, and in your district, that there are certain prosecutors and Democrats are saying, well, we don't care what the Supreme Court says. It's going to be very difficult for you to obtain a weapon to carry, a concealed weapon to carry, etc. So what's your position on that?
All right. Well, I am pro Second Amendment. I always have been and always will be. I own. I'm a responsible owner. My father taught me gun safety when I was a child. He was a fireman, paid fireman, but in Clifton, New Jersey, when they weren't working fires back in the day, back in the early 70s, firemen used to strap on a revolver and go out patrol, which was interesting. I think you can appreciate that the policemen didn't like that because that was taking away overtime and manpower, and the firemen certainly didn't like it because it was a job that they rather be at the fire station than going out on patrol. But point being, my father taught me gun safety. I was raised with firearms. I own guns. I have guns in the household that are safely secured for my children. So I am pro Second Amendment. I'm the only candidate in this race that took guns off the street and drugs off the street. My opponent, she claims to be, well, she says, and she was a federal prosecutor. Sounds like a great title, and it is if you do hard work. She did criminal justice reform. She freed people while I was putting bad people in prison. I did about 100 trials, and I closed thousands of cases. And in that time, I don't think I can remember at all one crime that was committed with a legal weapon. Every crime that I had that was violence and used a firearm, that firearm was illegal. Illegal, stolen, shared, ghost, all the weapons were illegal. So I have strong opinions on legal weapons and rights to own. New Jersey, a state in this country, has the strongest gun laws on the books. I don't think there's another state that has as stringent gun laws as we do. The gun laws here, what they're trying to do now, the Second Amendment, the Supreme Court has ruled that there is a right to carry. They came out with two big decisions, the Dobbs decisions on choice and life, and they came out with the right to carry. The Supreme Court has ruled Americans have the right to carry a firearm. The states now, and I predicted it and I said it when my friends were telling me, oh, I'm going to go out and get my carry permit next week. I said, no, that's not going to happen anytime soon. New Jersey has made it so onerous with the rules and the things that they want to put in place right now that it is very difficult to conceive that there is not going to be legal challenges. They've put it in places that they cannot use, and they've extended that to where virtually you're only going to be allowed to carry in your house or on your actual property. That's not what the Supreme Court decision said. So we are going to go through a lot of litigation in New Jersey regarding what Trenton is proposing and what actually turns out. I would like to say, though, being the only person in this race that has actually taken guns off the street, we did buybacks and we did undercover stings for guns, and we took a lot of guns off the street. One of the things we talk about here is red flag laws. Red flag laws are when a person is a threat to themselves or others. On this campaign, I like to tell my people I'm a little bit different type of Republican because I dealt with violence in Patterson. I'm sympathetic to an urban environment in which gangs are shooting at each other and killing. We had a little 14-year-old girl who was killed by gang crossfire. So I'm aware of the use of illegal guns. I'm aware of gang violence, red flag laws, where if you're a threat to yourself or others, and there's a process where we can temporarily seize that weapon until a judge can make a final ruling. That seems to work in New Jersey. It's used ever so rarely. In my 1 year dealing with red flag laws before I retired, I think I remember being used 8 times during the year, which was not much. But we have the laws in New Jersey that don't permit a folding stock and flash suppressors and all these other things. But right now, the biggest fight that we're going to be doing is how do we get the Supreme Court decision in the hands of the law-abiding, regular, sane person that wants a carry permit. And I think it's going to be at least a year to 2 years before the litigation wrings itself out.
Well, believe it or not, an hour has gone by. We've only got a few minutes left, but there's 2 topics I want to talk about very quickly. You being a former prosecutor must truly disturb you, I'm sure it does, this so-called criminal justice reform that is mandating that prosecutors release people no cash bail. As a congressman, how can you address that?
There again, my opponent, she prides herself on being a federal prosecutor, but then she doesn't tell what she actually did. She released people. She was part of criminal justice reform. She did prisoner community activist or whatever she was so prisoners can re-enter society. I had 4:30 in the morning wake up calls. I had search warrants with a judge regarding crime. Bail reform in New Jersey is terrible. We are going through a tsunami of car thefts, burglaries, break-ins. My own car in my own driveway was broken into. It wasn't stolen, but they entered it, and that's what's happening now. There's burglaries. There was a home break-in with the owner that was there, and they walked right through the front door, and they demanded that the owner give the keys to the cars over. So bail reform in New Jersey is broken. Criminal justice reform. I'm law enforcement. I'm law enforcement 100% all the way. When we have safety on the streets in our communities, people have the right. They have the right to seek better jobs. Children can go to school unmolested and not under the thought of violence. We need safe streets. America it's gone through a public reckoning and a problem. Police officers are denigrated when they should be uplifted. A police officer, when you have a crime that's happening, you don't say, "Oh, those police, they do bad things." You say, "Where's a police officer? I need a police officer." You call 911 for an emergency. Police officers need to be respected for the job they do. They will get that respect from this congressman, and they will get the support from this congressman. And my district will be better off for that. My district will have police officers that do their jobs, arrest criminals, and we will make sure that those criminals serve the time and get the punishment that merits the crime.
Before I go to the next very quick topic, because it does involve Canada, got a note for you, my friend. Lieutenant Rogers, you and that congressman should come to Canada and have a nice face-to-face with Justin Trudeau.
I'm in.
Well, you're in.
I'm in.
I got to tell you, you and I can go. You'll have diplomatic immunity. I won't be able to get out of the country. They'll probably throw me in some sort of jail or something, for goodness sakes. All right, one more. This has been great. One more. And this is concerning Americans in your district, all right, as well as around the country and Canadians. I bring this up because, as I shared with you earlier, right in my neighborhood, unbeknown to me, there are Canadians who live here. Let's put it this way, there are Canadians who are now living in America, but they have relatives in Canada. Also in New Jersey, as you know, this is a great summer vacation spot for Canadians, helps our economy.
Yes.
Like I said, until I started seeing Canadian flags here in Nutley, I didn't realize how many of our Canadian neighbors were here. So here's a problem that Congress has to address. And we're going to bring this to you after you're sitting in Congress, as well as a good number of your colleagues after January 20th. Justin Trudeau has decimated the people of that country with regard to mandates. I mean, it was terrible, really terrible. I won't get into that, all of it, but I'll get into this part that's affecting people in our district who are from Canada and have relatives in Canada. The mandate of showing a vaccination status to cross the border hasn't been eliminated by the Biden administration. We have people in Canada, they've written to me, I've got letters, I've got some on video who we interviewed, that couldn't get here to see their children graduate college. They have sick relatives here that they want to see. And the United States government, because of Joe Biden and because of your opponents' support of that party, are at times demanding that these people be vaccinated. My point is this: we've got thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants crossing the border without no ID, no vaccination status. We don't know where they're going, where they're coming from. And yet, as you very pointedly said earlier, one of our greatest allies. We're not allowing these people to come in the country because they don't have proof of a vac status. So as a congressman, even before you get elected to Congress, could you give us your view on that and maybe help bring some relief to the Canadian people that America, although is now going the wrong way, but with guys like you in office, we're going to go the right way?
I could say to our Canadian friends, sanity is on its way. We are going to bring common sense back to the Congress. We're going to bring common sense back to America and our relations with Canada. I volunteer. I got vaccinated. I got double vaccinated. That's my decision. It was made for my wife made the same decision, and we made it, for ourselves. And I don't ask people whether they got vaccinated. And quite frankly, the vaccination effort has been large, and a lot of people have now been vaccinated. We have different variants of COVID. I think that right now it is time to open up businesses, open up the borders, get things back to normalcy, get things back to with the school systems. We had a lost year of education. Children learning remotely, children being masked. And it's very hard to learn language skills when you're 4 years old and you have to wear a mask, or 3 years old and you have to wear a mask. Let's get back to normalcy. The vaccination and showing vaccination cards, we're still going on through that discussion through America, whether people can get fired because they weren't vaccinated. And we've had some Supreme Court, some local rulings regarding that. I say that COVID is, Joe Biden even said it. I think he said it about, a couple of weeks ago, COVID is over. So, hey, it's over. If he says it, it must be true, right?
Well, he's going to be over soon.
Yes, he will. At least the lame duck. But it's time to reopen the borders the way they were. It's time to get back to business. It's time to get back to educating our children in person. It's time to go back to work, back to offices. I know if you can work remotely, that's great. But our productivity needs to be back to the way it was before the pandemic. I look toward my own doctor too, when he was talking about my children, 4.5 and 2-year-old, and my own doctor said, don't get them the vaccination. It's not right for young children. It's not been tested enough. They don't have the respiratory systems that will allow them to get the virus. And if they get the virus, they will likely be fine. My own doctor said that, and I believe my own doctor. And for us, like I said, we got vaccinated, but the policy decisions, this vaccination card thing, let's get past this. Let's move on. America wants to reopen. We want, and all our neighbors want to reopen. We got to get back to normal life. We can't be doing this for decades.
Paul, as we wrap this up, I'll tell you what, your discussion regarding this issue is a real pleasure, because you told us you're vaccinated, but you told us that was your individual choice. Correct. And so there we go again with individual rights. I'm not vaccinated, and that was my individual choice.
And we sat across from each other, and
yes, we didn't demonize each other.
Correct.
There's love in the air. But you see, in certain countries like in Canada, they were mandated, and as you know, in America, people were told you're going to lose your jobs. They threatened them if their kids didn't get vaccinated. This was a very, very good discussion. I mean, really very good. People need to hear more of that. So final thoughts before you go off and win this election. Final thoughts.
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity to, again, tell people in America, overseas, the type of person you're going to be getting. They can go to my website, pauldegrootcares.com, to learn about what I stand for, what I believe. And I like to say that, I mentioned I'm married to a wonderful woman, a great mom, great businesswoman. She also has a success story, and I think your wife is similar. About my wife immigrated to the country after waiting to get into this country 2 years legally. And when she did, she became a citizen, and that's what our country's about. America's always been a country of immigrants. We want and support legal immigration. So Paul DeGroot Cares is my website. We have less than 7 days now to go to this election. It is a very important election. There are 2 different thoughts and theories about which direction this country should go. I'm for the thought that we should be freedom, liberty, and we should be supporting our friends, helping our allies, and getting back to normalcy. We are a wonderful, respected country, and I say, nice to see that you have our northern neighbors, as your fans and part of this discussion. Much respect, and I will soon, hopefully next summer, go to Toronto to visit Sharon's aunts and bring our newborn up there.
Ah, that's great.
So-
And Paul, somebody just reminded me of something, and I know we had this discussion, and believe me, I'll end it. I know you're probably busy. I promised God that when he brought me to a point where we would have tremendous amount of influence, whether it be in the country or worldwide, that I would never forget him. So in that spirit, I want you to know we're going to be praying for you, your family. We're going to be praying for our countries because we do believe in the power of prayer. And I've always believed that I'm a real good student of Ronald Reagan's life. And he believed that he had a calling from God to become president, and he did. So I believe all of us have a calling in our life, and he's put us in a station in life where we will have a great influence, not only for our country, but for his kingdom. And so I just want you to know that's how we feel about you. And we wish you Godspeed.
Thank you. That is a wonderful thought. And I like to say, from your mouth to God's ears, let's make this happen. Thank you.
And Teddy Roosevelt's and Ronald Reagan's ears.
That's it.
Thank you. God bless you, Paul. Thank you. Stand
Thank
by,
you.
folks. Don't go anywhere. I want to just be now. You know, we talk in America. We're the heroes. You just saw one. All right. You just saw an American hero. You may not read a lot about these heroes like Paul and others in the newspapers every day, but boy, they do pop up and they do make a lot of sense. So those of you here in America, in the 11th district, go out and vote. He's your guy. It's in my district. He's for freedom. He's for liberty. He's for individual rights. He's for America. And for my Canadian friends, you heard what he had to say. All right. So we're bringing this whole picture together, aren't we? For God and for country. So that's it, folks. That ends our special edition. We did go over time, but as we continued to go, we were getting more and more people asking questions, and he answered them. Did he not? He answered them. And that is a real refreshing thing to see. All right, folks, that's it. So Thursday night, let's see. Tomorrow night, I'll be speaking at the Asian American Republican Coalition. There's going to be about several hundred people there here in New Jersey. We're going to be talking a lot about what we talked about tonight. Also, on Thursday night, tonight in Canada, we got a special guest, folks. I know you love the guy we're going to have on. We're going to be talking about the situation still unfolding in Canada with those policies, the issues here in America, but primarily how we're going to work hard to solve those problems in Canada. And I don't know what I did with it, but here it is. We are thinking about this. I talked about this last night. You see this, folks? This is going to be maybe one more country added to our list here that we will be able to send information to and to help people do what the Canadian people have done, what the American people have done in relation to meeting these challenges. Now, we put a new commercial up. I think many of you saw it. We take a real good hit at the WEF and the Chinese Communist Party. Take a look at the commercial. It's on Facebook, Rumble, Vimeo, YouTube. It's 1 minute and 41 seconds. It says a lot. They will never be able to separate the people of Canada and the people of the United States with regard to our fight for freedom and liberty. Thank you all for joining me. God bless you, and God bless freedom-loving people around the world. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers.